was unable to sustain an erection, according to official reports. Frustrated with his impotence, Miley violated the teen with a blunt object. Then, Bonin took over again. Sterling E. Norris, the prosecutor who convicted Bonin of 10 murders, said Bonin often goaded and belittled his accomplices into helping with the killing. "Can you do it?" Bonin asked Miley.
Here we can see that Bonin would mentally abuse his helpers as well. Not, he would also encourage them to rape and strangle the victims as well.
As he choked 15-year-old Charles Miranda, "Let me show you how to do this." Bonin strangled Miranda with the boy's shirt, using a tire iron to twist the shirt like a tourniquet around Miranda's neck. Miranda's nude body was found in a Los Angeles alley. "Bonin loved the killing," said Norris. He delighted in talking about it. Driven with bloodlust, Bonin and Miley drove around some more after dumping Miranda's corpse. They wanted to kill again. Their next victim was 12-year-old James McCabe, who was waiting at a bus stop for a bus to Disneyland. While Miley drove around, Bonin assaulted the youngster and strangled him, again using the boy's shirt and a tire iron. James McCabe, who was looking for a trip to the Magic Kingdom and met lurking death instead, was found 3 days later near a dumpster in Walnut.
At this point in time in William Bonin's killings, we can argue that his archetype is to be an expert manipulator, as he manipulated a lot of these victims into going into his van, where he would then rape and murder each and every one of his victims that stepped into that van.
Walnut City. Bonin and Miley used the $6 they found in his wallet to buy lunch. Other murders followed quickly. Ronald Gatlin, 18, of Van Nuys, disappeared from North Hollywood on March 14, 1980, violated and strangled. His body was discovered the next day in Duarte. Harry Todd Turner, 14, Los Angeles, disappeared from Hollywood on March 20th, 1980, violated and strangled. His body...
This victim here, Harry Todd Turner, would be his youngest victim. He was the age of 12 before he was murdered by Bonin.
He was found 5 days later near the Santa Monica Freeway. Glenn Norman Barker, 14, Huntington Beach, violated and strangled. His body was found on March 22, 1980, beside Ortega Highway. Russell Dwayne Rue, 15, Garden Grove, disappeared while waiting for a bus to take him to his fast food job, violated and strangled. His body was found on March 22, 1980, beside Ortega Highway, alongside the body of Glenn Barker.
So here we can see how he was dubbed the freeway killer, as most of his killings would be dumped in near a freeway.
Stephen Wood, 16, Bellflower, last seen April 10, 1980, on his way to school, violated and strangled. His body was found the next day. Lawrence Eugene Sharp, 18, Long Beach, last seen April 10, 1980, violated and strangled. His body was found May 18, 1980, in a trash bin behind a Westminster service station. Darren Lee Kendrick, 19, Cyprus, disappeared on April 29, 1980, from a Stanton store where he worked. In addition to being sodomized and strangled by ligature, Darren apparently was forced to ingest chloral hydrate, which left him with caustic chemical burns on his mouth, chin, chest, and stomach. Darren also had an ice pick through his right ear that caused a fatal wound to the upper cervical spinal cord. His body was found the next morning.
The murder before would be one of Bonin and his team's most gruesome killings.
Bonin had the police running in circles and was enjoying the publicity his killings were receiving. He would point out to his friends the work that the freeway killer was doing, and once remarked that, "This guy is giving good gays like us a bad name." He was keeping a scrapbook of his work in his van. A nondescript arrest would soon blow the case wide open.
Here we can see how he would record and have a memorabilia of his killings of his victims. as was discussed, and how most of these serial killers usually take a souvenir out of their killings, as previously discussed in Dr. Hood's class, one of Dr. Hood's class.
However, in May, police busted a car thief named William Pooh. The 17-year-old was more than just a thief, however. He had been along for the ride when Bonin killed Harry Turner and would eventually serve 6 years for voluntary manslaughter, part of a plea deal in exchange for his testimony. In an attempt to save his own skin, Pooh told authorities that he'd accepted a ride from a man who had boasted of the freeway killings. Police began looking for William Bonin based on Pooh's allegations. On the morning of June 2, 1980, Bonin and another accomplice, a mentally challenged drifter named James Monroe, picked up 19-year-old Stephen Wells. According to Monroe's testimony, Wells agreed to accompany the men back to the apartment they were sharing so that they could have sex. Monroe, who's serving a 15-to-life sentence in Mule Creek State Prison in Ione, California for his role in Wells's death, said that Bonin and Wells had sex, and Bonin offered Wells $200 if he could tie up the young man. Wells agreed, Monroe said, and shortly after he was bound, Bonin began to assault him verbally and physically. Monroe said he watched TV in another room while Bonin tied up and violated the youth in his own mother's bedroom. Bonin called him in. He said, "At that point, I knew it was real. Bonin went to get a glass of water and I told him, 'No, don't do this.' But Bonin said, 'It's too late. There's nothing that you or I can do to stop it.'" Bonin said Monroe helped kill Wells, but Monroe claims he was in another room when the man was strangled. Regardless, his actions amounted to first-degree murder, which would have put him in the gas chamber right next to Bonin and Butts. After Wells...
Here we can see how their teamwork starts to deteriorate. After Wells pleads for him not to kill the young boy,
was dead, Bonin and Monroe took the body in Bonin's van over to Butts's home, who told them to go dump it somewhere. The next day, Wells's body was found behind a gas station dumpster. Sadly, if the killers had tarried just a little longer at their apartment, they would have been observed by the LAPD detectives who had begun surveillance of William Bonin. There was a chance that they would have been able to save Wells's life. Over the next few days, detectives kept a close eye on William Bonin. For the next week, his activities were unremarkable. He would go to work as a truck driver each day and return home to his apartment late at night after visiting with friends around town. The night of Wells's murder, Bonin had hit...
One thing that I failed to mention earlier is that he was a truck driver locally. So it is possible that Bonin did kill more than those 14 victims. That's why he's suspected of 30.
Hinted to Monroe that the drifter had better keep his mouth shut, or else. Monroe, fearful for his own life, fled back home to Michigan. 9 days after Wells's murder, Bonin's demons apparently returned, and he began looking for a new victim. Police officers tailing his van observed him trying to pick up 5 different young men, finally succeeding with a 15-year-old boy. They watched as Bonin drove to a deserted beach parking lot, and by the time they approached the van, they were able to arrest Bonin in the process of sodomizing the teenager. Tape and rope similar to that which bound his victims was found in the van, as well as William's scrapbook for freeway killer stories.
This van right here is where most of his killings happened.
Butts was picked up shortly after Bonin, and Monroe was arrested by Michigan State Police a month later. The freeway killer team was behind bars. This time, there would be no clerical errors. Bonin expressed no remorse for what he had done, although he did demonstrate embarrassment and regret at being apprehended. Once confronted with the evidence, he freely confessed to the police. After his arrest, Bonin told a reporter, "I'd still be killing. I couldn't stop killing. It got easier each time." Bonin confessed to killing 21 young men and boys. He shared aspects of each crime in horrifying detail. Describing how he and Monroe murdered Wells, Bonin sounded like he was describing a weekend event to co-workers on Monday morning. "Both me and Jim beat him up prior to killing him," Bonin can be heard saying in a soft monotone on police tapes. "He said he wouldn't tell anyone, just to let him go. When we finally got around to killing him,